back to the Gridiron Expert. We are finally starting to reach what should be some of the better bowl games of the 2018 postseason, and we're going to kick things off with our next three games on December 27th, which are the Independence Bowl, the Pinstripe Bowl, and the Texas Bowl. So we're going to just jump right on in and predict these next three games, starting with Temple versus Duke in the Independence Bowl. And we'll start over here with the Owls, with the biggest storyline out of them coming that Geoff Collins has left Temple to take the head coaching job at Georgia Tech. And as we all know, Paul Johnson, who has been at Georgia Tech for 11 years, is going to just retire. He's leaving the Georgia Tech job after a very disappointing loss in the Quick Lane Bowl to Minnesota. They lost that game 34-10, so a very disappointing way for his career to end with the Yellow Jackets. Certainly didn't see that game going the way it did, but give a lot of credit to P.J. Fleck and the Golden Gophers for shutting down that option offense and really spoiling Paul Johnson's season finale and career finale with Georgia Tech. So Geoff Collins has left to take that job. Manny Diaz, the Miami defensive coordinator, which we'll talk about here in a second, has decided to accept the job as Temple head coach, but the coach for this game will be Ed Foley, who, if you haven't seen his video, really firing his team up, giving that speech at his little press conference there, getting this Temple team very fired up for this bowl game. You really need to go watch that because it got me fired up, and I'm not even a fan of the Owls. But you've got to give him a lot of credit. He coached Temple 2 years ago as interim head coach as well in their bowl game against Wake Forest, which they lost 34-26. But nonetheless, this is a Temple team that, despite losing their head coach, is still going to be very competitive and hoping to clinch a 9-win season for the third time in the past 4 years. It was not an easy start for them, though. They started off the season 0-2, losing to Villanova and Buffalo before winning 6 of their last 7. And Temple, not always being known for being an offensive team, they've been known every now and then, but in those 6 of those last 7 games that they won, they put up 40 or more points 4 times. So this is a very talented Temple offense that has started to find their identity, and a defense that isn't too bad either. So I'm very excited to see how they go up against a very solid Duke offense led by Daniel Jones, who we'll talk about here momentarily. The problem for Duke, they are allowing 222.3 rushing yards per game. And we mentioned Temple's offense, and they have battled some injuries there at the quarterback position with Anthony Rousseau and Ryquell Armstead. But assuming Armstead plays, who has rushed for 1,098 yards and 13 touchdowns on the year, he might have a field day against this Blue Devils defense that has pretty much been non-existent over the past month or so, and as I mentioned, is allowing over 200 yards per game just on the ground. So Armstead might have an opportunity to make out a couple of big plays and really give Temple a pretty big cushion in this game. Thing for Duke, though, one thing that I have learned, and as I mentioned for other coaches, is never to doubt David Cutcliffe, much like I don't doubt Nick Saban, much like I don't doubt Gary Patterson, especially in bowl games. And Gary Patterson getting a huge bowl win last night as well with a 10-7 victory over California in one of the ugliest games you'll ever see in college football. 9 combined interceptions between California and TCU before the Horned Frogs could get the win with a field goal in overtime to win that game 10-7. But nonetheless, I don't doubt David Cutcliffe either. He has done a phenomenal job turning around this Duke program. Once again, developed another star quarterback in Daniel Jones. Many who were saying could be a first-round NFL draft pick, if not second-round NFL draft pick when the draft occurs in April. Duke starting off 5-1 on the year before losing 4 of their last 6, allowing an average of 44 points per game in those 4 losses. So will their defense show up against a Temple offense that's starting to have a resurgence? That's my main fear here, is whether Duke's defense will be there or not. And I think they will turn things around. They've had a long time to dwell on this, to fix things, and I think they will get the job done there. Temple's defense is only allowing 166.3 passing yards a game, so Daniel Jones will have his work cut out for him, but knowing that he will have a lot of NFL scouts looking at him, I think he's going to be able to show up and show out. I think Duke gets a very, very close win over Temple, and what could be called a mini upset, as the Owls are favored by about 3.5 points in Vegas. So I'm going to pick the Blue Devils in this one. This is a game I truly could see going either way. I just feel that Duke has too much talent and too much veteran experience in these type of scenarios, and I think they're going to get the win over Temple. Miami versus Wisconsin in the Pinstripe Bowl, and you could also rename this bowl the Disappointment Bowl. Miami starting off the season number 8 in the country to start the year. Wisconsin starting off the year number 4 in the country. People had Wisconsin making the college football playoff and maybe even winning the Big Ten and making the college football playoff back when the season began. And here they both are sitting at 7-5 on the year. We'll start over here with Miami, which was a major disappointment in the ACC. Pretty much people thought the Hurricanes were going to be the biggest threat to Clemson, hoping to see a rematch between them in the ACC title game. Of course, we all know that didn't happen. They started off number 8, lost to LSU, battled back, won 4 straight, I believe, and then lost 4 straight, and then lost their final 2 to finish 7-5. So this has been a very disappointing year for Miami. People are already calling for Mark Richt's head. He's only been there for a couple years now, but they're very disappointed in his performance, especially after the high expectations he set and the high expectations the Hurricanes had coming into this season. One major storyline here, though, is that for the majority of the season, or about a little way half the way through the season, Richt put in N'Kosi Perry, who was playing fairly solid at quarterback. He is going to pull Perry for this game and put in Malik Rozier back in at quarterback, and many people criticize that call. Many people are not pleased with his performance as he has done over the past 2 years with the Hurricanes, but I think this is a good call for Mark Richt. I think Rozier, having experience in big games, having experience in the postseason, will help Miami going into this bowl game against Wisconsin. Of course, though, Miami, like Temple, losing a lot of people, both on players and coaches. They're losing Manny Diaz, who is left to go take the Temple head coaching job. They've lost Gerald Willis, the All-American defensive tackle, and they're losing their leading wide receiver from this season, Jeff Thomas, who will be transferring to Illinois. So losing a lot of firepower on both sides of the ball for Miami going into this bowl game. However, their defense is still one of the best in the nation, despite losing their defensive coordinator, despite losing Gerald Willis. They're allowing just 18.2 points per game over the course of the year, allowing a total of just 268.3 yards per game. So this is a very, very solid Miami defense that, even though they're 7-5, you wouldn't think they'd be one of the better defenses with the record they have, but they are. This is a very impressive team. I am curious to see, though, how they perform with the loss of Manny Diaz. Over here with Wisconsin, though, same thing. Number 4 in the country to start the year. People were, expecting them to maybe make the College Football Playoff, at least maybe make a case for winning the Big Ten against Ohio State. Couldn't get the job. And to make matters worse for this game, Alex Hornibrook, the quarterback for the Badgers, will be out of this game battling concussion symptoms for weeks now. So Jack Coan will come in as starting quarterback for this game. And he's had experience in some games over the course of this year, but he's no Alex Hornibrook, one that I think is one of the more underrated quarterbacks in the Big Ten, or was one of the more underrated quarterbacks in the Big Ten. And as we mentioned, for a lot of these teams, Wisconsin going 7-5, the spotlight wasn't on them as much as they would have been had they still been ranked in the top 10. But Jonathan Taylor, a Heisman finalist just last year, finished with 1,989 yards on the ground and 15 touchdowns. So we have to, really respect Jonathan Taylor's game. Just as a sophomore, almost rushing for 2,000 yards after a very stellar performance last year as just a freshman. He didn't get the attention he deserved this year, mostly because of the performance of the Badgers as a team. Wisconsin lost 3 of their last 5 games, didn't win back-to-back games after October 6th. So starting on October 6th, they alternated wins and losses all the way to the end of the year. This is a game that I feel like could go Wisconsin's way if they can get the run game going. Jonathan Taylor's averaging 7.1 yards per carry, but this Miami defense is still extremely tough. Still, like Wisconsin, hasn't gotten a lot of attention because you pay more attention to the fallout. You pay more attention to, they were number 8, now look at them. They're nothing. They're 7-5. But this is still a very talented Hurricanes team, and I think they're going to get a huge win against Wisconsin, clinch an 8-win season in the Pinstripe Bowl. The only benefit I can see of this game being played in New York, Wisconsin used to the colder weather. Will it have an effect on Miami, who's used to playing down in Florida? A little bit of warmer weather down there. We're not going to find out until later this afternoon. But I think the Hurricanes get a huge win. Maybe save Mark Richt's butt just for a little while longer. And then Baylor versus Vanderbilt to close out this Thursday night in the Texas Bowl. Very intriguing matchup here, Big 12 versus SEC. Give a lot of credit to what Matt Rhule has done with the Bears. Going 1-11 last year and getting them all the way to 6-6 this year and clinching a very solid bowl berth in the Texas Bowl. That is not a bad bowl by any means. They clinched their bowl berth with a 35-24 win over Texas Tech. That was a winner-take-all game, and the game that ultimately got Cliff Kingsbury fired as head coach of the Red Raiders. Charlie Brewer, a very solid dual-threat quarterback for Baylor, but nothing to get too excited about. What I'm very excited to see is Jalen Hurd, the star wide receiver, or Charlie Brewer's favorite wide receiver for the Bears this year. 946 yards receiving and 4 touchdowns. And if you remember, Jalen Hurd, formerly playing for Tennessee, so does have some experience going up against Derek Mason and the Commodores. The key for this game, though, for Baylor to go up against the Vanderbilt team is their defense. They're allowing 31.2 points per game. And we all know, we've heard it all before, the Big 12 is not known for having any defense. And Baylor kind of fits that motto right now. They aren't known for having a defense this year. They're working on that, but allowing 31.2 points per game is not good, especially when you're going up against a Vanderbilt team that is starting to find their groove on offense and has slowly found their groove on offense over the course of Derek Mason's tenure with the Commodores. Derek Mason saved his job this season by clinching a bowl berth with Vanderbilt. This is their second bowl appearance in the past 3 years, but had he not made the bowl this year, I think he would have been out as head coach with Vanderbilt. But they're starting to find their groove. They clinched their bowl berth with back-to-back wins in overtime against Ole Miss, and then a blowout win over Tennessee. This is going to be a very exciting game for me because I'm excited to see veteran quarterback Kyle Shermer, a senior at Vanderbilt who's done so much. In my opinion, one of the better quarterbacks to ever come through Vanderbilt. He's 118 yards away from breaking the all-time passing yards record at Vanderbilt set by the legendary Jay Cutler. So he will more than likely break that game here, and Vanderbilt does, I think, own the edge when it comes to the quarterback position. I also think they own the edge when it comes to the running back position with Keyshawn Vaughn, who just kind of rushed onto the scene this year as a junior, has 1,001 yards on the ground, 10 total touchdowns, is averaging 6.95 yards per rush. Now listen to this. He's averaging that many yards per rush. Baylor was allowing 5.04 yards per rush. So there was a very solid chance Keyshawn Vaughn just kind of bursts onto the scene in this Texas Bowl, runs all over this Baylor defense that is really struggling, as I said, allowing over 30 points per game. I don't think Vanderbilt runs away with this game. They're only 4-point favorites, but I do think they get a big win over Baylor to clinch a 7-win season, a winning season. The first time they would have done that since the James Franklin days before he left and took the job at Penn State. This would be a huge morale booster for Derek Mason and his Commodores program. Baylor getting back on track, getting back to a bowl game, not the way they want to end their season, but certainly have some things to look forward to in the future, obviously showing lots of signs of progress. So, but I think Vanderbilt clinches a 7-win season for the first time, I think, since 2013, and what should be a fun Texas Bowl to conclude Thursday night. And down here at the bottom, you can see that our bowl record as of now going into the slate of games is 11-5, so not too bad. Pretty good start to bowl season. Of course, we could have had an extra game in there, but the first responder bowl between Boston College and Boise State getting canceled due to weather. I've never seen that happen before, especially in bowl games, but very unfortunate for Boston College and Boise State, for those players, for those fans, for those coaches. I know it's a very frustrating thing to have to go through. Against the spread, sitting at 9-7, so just a 2-game difference straight up and against the spread. So we're happy with where we're at right now. Of course, want to finish above 500 come the end of bowl season, but we have a lot of bowl games left to predict, a lot of bowl games left to play, so we're excited to see where that's going. Spread picks for these games and spread picks for the remaining bowl games will always be coming out on Twitter, so make sure you continue to check that out. And let's get ready to watch some more football. We've got nonstop football going from this Thursday all the way through Saturday, including the college football playoff, taking a break on Sunday for NFL, and then we've got back-to-back days on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day full of college football before we have the national championship on January 7th. So we got a lot of football left to watch, a lot of football left to play, and a lot of football left to predict, and you're going to get the best predictions, news, and analysis right here at The Gridiron Expert. So as always, we please ask you to continue to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you next time on The Gridiron Expert.